And welcome everyone to episode 4 of the Endless Blading Show. I'm Brad, the founder designer at Endless. And today we have a really great episode planned for you all. We are going to be talking about the Endless Arc 5-wheel frames with my friends here, Andrew Yu and Billy Arlu. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Great to see you. So,
good to see you too. Super excited to talk about this.
Yeah, this is going to be a good episode. I mean, we've been talking about doing this for a while now, and I think it's going to be hopefully this will be informative for everybody watching, but we're going to take a little trip down memory lane and dive into the extra nerdy details of how we got here. Why don't we start off, and maybe you guys can tell everyone who you are and why you skate.
Yeah, you want to go first, Andrew?
Sure.
Who are you?
Okay. Who am I?
Yeah, who are you?
So, hi, I'm Andrew. I've been skating for a couple of years now as a dad blader since like 2020, like most dad bladers. But I also skated in the 90s for a good bit, mostly to try to play hockey. Never played hockey, but I wanted to. So the way that I skated was always kind of like oriented around that. Came back to it during the pandemic. Just really enjoyed cruising around like my neighborhood at night. And at night, as I was trying to like process what was going on in the world, I would find sort of all the cool videos people were putting out, a lot of the mushroom blading, wizard skating kind of stuff. And I was like, I want to do that. And pretty much the last 3 years have been just me trying to get there. It's a little about me.
Awesome.
How about you, Billy?
Good to hear that you also had a background in hockey. I definitely spent probably a full decade playing roller hockey in local leagues, and then eventually in high school was on like the high school roller hockey team, which is pretty unique, I think, to California.
That's
to
awesome.
Have something like that. But yeah, I also skated aggressive, mostly park as a teenager kid, going to the local van skate park and hitting the biggest jumps I could. Basically wasn't about grinding, was all about airtime. And then hockey was all about footwork. And then I pretty much stopped skating in college when I grew out of my skates, but I just barely learned about mushroom blading at that time in 2008. And then for 12 years, I didn't think about rollerblading really at all. And then in 2020, saw somebody on massive wheels, immediately looked up mushroom blading because it lived rent free in my head and was like, oh, cool, they're wizard skating. That's what I'll do too. So I just love that style of just jumping on stuff and swiveling and bopping. And that's what I've tried to do ever since. So
awesome. We've got some fellow Denverites here. Jordan, welcome.
Jordan. Nice. Yeah, we have a
friend-
big crew out here.
Yeah, our friend Dan is here.
Hey, Dan.
Dandelion. Good to see you.
A swivelly bopper, indeed.
Yeah. Ben Nguyen has the Arc Mercuries. Great.
You're chosen wisely.
I'm going to be showing off mine tonight. These babies. I put on some
bright.
fancy pink axles to match our backdrop tonight.
That's so fancy.
So what I was thinking we could do is maybe first discuss, I guess what I really want to do is tonight we're gonna discuss how we got here. Like, where did we start and how did we end up here? And then obviously, we have, a 165 version of the frame as well, and soon to be a Trinity version. So I'm just going to start off by going over some of the way back history here. I like to, when I design stuff, I take copious notes. I have like a design journal where I record like all my ideas, all my bad ideas. I have like videos of myself testing stuff, pictures, obviously. Revisions I want to make. So I was going back through those notes. And this whole ARC project started back in August of 2021, so over 2 years ago at this point. And I actually started this whole project with our friend John, who some of you might know as rollerbalding on
Oh, yeah.
social media, and he had put out like a really great video on YouTube called "How to Wizard Skate." I think there's a link on the blog on the Endless Blading website if anybody's interested in checking that out. And so I wanted to make a 5-wheel frame for John. So we started talking in earnest about this at the end of the summer, and then really I started digging into the design probably October, November timeframe. And I was trying to figure out like what was I after? And it looks around that time I was really into this idea of skating smaller wheels on my 4-wheel frame. So I would take like the Endless 100 frame and I would put on 80 millimeter wheels or 76 millimeter wheels. And I was discovering that there was something about the smaller wheels that gave me a more precise, more defined pivot. And so I had this thought of having these small pivots, but I also wanted something that would be like a reasonable length. And to me, reasonable length was like no more than 5x76 or 5x80 or 4x100, like that type of wheelbase. But I also wanted something that was like reasonably fast that you could skate around in. So that kind of drove this concept of adding the bigger wheels on the outside for me. It was never about doing a particular trick. It was really about balancing out these small wheels that wouldn't be so fast with something that would maybe like restore some of that speed. And so it's
Question for you on that.
yeah.
The Swan frame also does that. And I'm just curious if you were pursuing a 4-wheel version of this, or was it 5 wheels just because that was what rollerbalding was interested in? Or did you think you could solve this with a 4-wheel frame at all? Or was it 5 from the start?
No, yeah, it was 5 from the start. Like I really, I think at that point, 5-wheel frames were really getting popular. Like there was some competitors making 165 versions of 5-wheel frames. And like, I consider myself a competitive person. So I really, wanted to, I was actually found a text message that I had written John. And I said, if I do a 5-wheel frame, I want to like, what was the terminology?
You wanted to do it your way, right?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
wanted to like evolve the 5-wheel concept, or like take it to the next level, or like do something where the performance was better than other designs, at least from my perspective. I wanted to see, what could I do to improve upon what had been done before? And so
Gotcha. Yeah.
that was what was driving it. And so really, and I know I've talked about this in some other episodes, the ARC frame, or what became the ARC frame, was really my concerted effort to design something for flatland or wizard skating or flow skating, whatever you want to call it. Like that is the Endless offering for that style of skating. So I had a number of concepts that kind of met these early design criteria. And so we started ordering these prototypes back in December of 2021, and we got the first prototypes in early 2022 in January.
Yep.
And so that's kind of where you guys come in. Oops, I want to fast forward here. So I like to do these paper designs to just mock things up and see how they fit on the boots. So this one was 90 millimeter wheels in the front and back, and then 372 millimeter wheels. Then we had a concept that was 90s and 76s, because I thought, hey, for a bigger foot, I want something that is reasonably sized. One of the other early design criteria, I guess, was we thought that it would be cool to have adjustable rocker. So the front and rear axles would use rocker axles. So we started skating these January.
Yep.
And Andrew do you remember when I first contacted you, when I first reached out to you?
It was either in late December or early January, very early January.
Yeah. And I sent you basically this 9072 frame. Here's a picture on my Delta F.
Let me see if I got it. Got
Wow.
it right here. This
That
is
wheel size
9072.
differential is serious business.
Yeah. So that is something that I really want to get into the details of, is this what you refer to as a wheel differential. This was the 9076 version, which I have here. And obviously both these were for 165 frames. And then ultimately we have a prototype that looks more like what it ultimately wound up as the production version. But let's talk, Andrew, maybe we can talk about these two concepts a little bit, because we spent a decent amount of time skating these, and these clearly don't look like where we wound up. So maybe you can share with us, what was your experience skating these? Which one did you skate first, by the way?
I skated the 9072 for a good long bit before trying the 76s. A lot of, I don't want to go into too much of a tangent, but a lot of the development of the ARC kind of goes alongside my development as a skater. And I was still learning quite a bit. I mean, I was still learning a lot, but my development was much more nascent, let's say. And so a lot of what I was learning was on these frames. So, I spent a lot of time on the 72s, concerned about the length going to the 76s. I found the 72-90 to work great for what I was doing. I really appreciated just how tight the pivot spacing was on those middle wheels in particular. I have more to say about that, but let me pause for a sec. Does that all kind of track with your experiences with it?
Yeah, I was just remembering that before I even pitched these two concepts to John, I kind of was thinking, I was looking at my notes and I had all these different like wheel configurations with their wheelbases written out, because I was trying to see like what fit my criteria of a reasonable length. And I was looking at things like 84, 72, 84, 72, 84. I had 80, 72, 80, 72, 80. So it was like a bigger wheel in the center. But what I think I realized, so I was kind of honing in on this 72 to 80 millimeter range. I thought of as being small, but having a precise pivot. But what I quickly realized was that, all three center wheels are important pivots, especially the very center one on a 5-wheel frame. So I thought it might be better to have them all the same size. And I think at the end of November of 2021, that's basically when I went from, kind of just pondering these configurations to drawing out this stuff where I had the bigger wheels on the outside and the smaller wheels on the inside. And so when we first got these things, I remember I was so excited, and I just had in my this idea in my head that this was just going to skate amazing, but it was kind of a letdown. And
Was it slow?
It was so slow. Billy, why was this slow?
Oh, I'm just curious. Like, it was low to the ground, but 372 is like, I can imagine you were going from alternating high, low, like, or what have you, where you had like a big wheel in the middle and you were like, it's going to be fast. And then you do the 372s and it's like, oh, this is like a power blading, like early post-aggressive kind of skate. Like the 90s, it sounds like maybe weren't, well, the 90s aren't contacting the ground as much as the 72s are, right? Like
they aren't.
You roll on the 72s.
You roll on the 72s. And so it was just so sluggish. There was such a lack of momentum. Like, I appreciated the really defined pivot point, but I'm a size 40 shell. This is a size 42 actually on the Delta. But this is a size 40 shell on the FR1, and oops, this is the 72 version. For me, what I realized is that pivot spacing is just a little too tight. And so I felt like it was just twitchy. Like, so your foot, Andrew, is a little smaller. I mean,
yeah, I'm one shell lower. No, so this is the bigger point that I was gonna digress on about 5-wheel frames. So yeah, I skate the 3839 FR1 shell, and that's what I used for this 9072 and the 9076. The thing about 5-wheel frames is like, so what I was getting at is like, I was developing my wizard skating skills at the time, and I was mostly fascinated by the fact that I could do these tricks. It wasn't until later that I began to appreciate the subtle differences between them and how these changes could really make the experience very different. And going back to that frame, going back to the 9072, which I've done a couple times since, I'm sort of shocked at how slow it is and how squirrely some of the pivots are. I skate the 180 advanced now as one of the frames in my arsenal, and going back to this would just be shocking.
Yeah. And if you guys remember, I actually messed up the rocker on those early prototypes, and we had to make special corrective blue axles. Billy, you have
I have some of those. Yeah. And I still use them in the standard position.
Yeah. What was funny is because I couldn't get the axles made quick enough. By the time we got to the blue frame with the 84s and 76s, I basically had to design the third prototype to use our funky,
oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not correcting anything, but it's but it's what it's designed around. That makes sense.
Yeah. So but yeah, I just remember, besides it being slow, it was just feeling really squirrely to me. And so by the time I got to back to this one. By the time when I tried this, it felt so much better. And I think it's because the center pivot spacing was more like a 5x76 frame, which is a lot more intuitive. And that differential between the inside wheels and the outside was much less.
This
is a good comment. Like, we're not going to talk about the ARC CS today. I want to have a separate episode just specifically on the ARC CS, but this is an excellent point that I think was one of our big discoveries, is that the spacing between the wheels and how that changes from the outside wheels to the inside wheels, it really affects the feel of how things skate. And so while this was squirrely, this was less squirrely, and a lot of it had to do with that, as you go from wheel number 1 to wheel number 2 pivot versus 2 to 3, it's like, how do I even demonstrate this? It's like going from like wheel 3 to 2 is like this, but then going the rest of the way is like that.
Yeah.
Once
you felt it, you couldn't unfeel that.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And I just remember that we were kind of like, we just didn't really like that feel.
No, I remember being the time I remember, I don't know if we were like in some like group text about this, but I think I was skating down some hill like right afterwards and like, oh yeah, I feel that. It really was not pleasant.
Yeah. And so one of the things I think as we were skating all this stuff, I mean, I'm looking at my notes here. So we were skating all this in January and February, testing these prototypes. And then there was the wheel spacing issue that we didn't like, that we weren't feeling. And also that 9076, I mean, that's a long setup. I forget what was it 320? No, it's like, I can't remember what it was. It was long. It was like 330 something. I can't remember.
It's got to be close to that, yeah.
Yeah, but I just remember thinking like, there's a lot of frame sticking out. And for the average skater or somebody that's new to like that style of skating, that's going to be a a big frame to trip over. So the other thing that, that we kind of came up against was, what do we do with the frickin' wheels? Like, because we were on, so we had, I think I had sent you, this is not the right side. This is an 80 millimeter Street Invader, which has a round profile. And then I was sending you guys like 90 millimeter bullet profile. And what, maybe both of you guys can talk to your experience of like mismatched wheel profiles on a mixed wheel frame.
Yeah. So, and prior to having those kinds of wheels, I think I just tried to kludge together something cheap also just for like initial testing, which I think was actually kind of a valuable experience because, sometimes you just got to make do with what you got. And, a frame should try to address as many of those configurations as possible. And the 9076, just by the nature of the wheels out there in the marketplace, that's a hard one to match.
I mean, there are some 76 millimeter bullet profiles, but
well, now that the hydrogen one exists, that makes it a little better.
That made it a little better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have the undercover blank 72 and 76 that are both bullet. It was hard to find a 72 bullet, really hard. But the 76, there's a few options. Yeah. But the experience of having bullet profile wheels, especially on the ends and round or full profile in the middle, is actually something that aggressive skaters intentionally do to create a rocker when you're turning, so that your center wheels contact when you tip it over, right? Or when you're flat and all the wheels are the same height, they're it's a flat setup. But as soon as you tip it, your wheels on the ends sort of lift a little bit off the ground, and you're on just the two center wheels, and you can pivot. So you're riding a bowl, you're going straight up, you're flat. As soon as you want to make a turn, you have like some agility there, and not that kind of anti-rocker or flat setup. But then when you intentionally have it on a frame that's supposed to be all contacting the ground when you tip it over and carving nicely and smoothly, and some of them aren't touching anymore, you get these bonus rockers on wheels 2 and 4. So like the middle 3 wheels will be touching the ground, and then you get this additional kind of step off from the wheel being further into the middle than the center wheel. So there's like a little tip point right on the second wheel that it like waggles when you're carving.
Yes.
It's not a good feeling.
No. And that's what we were feeling. And we were like, this is not good. And then I was thinking from a business perspective, how do I get wheels to people that live in like South America, right? Where they've only got access to certain things. Like I didn't want to have a frame that only used specific wheels. It needed to be like accessible for people anywhere in the world. And so I think at that point, between the wheel spacing issue and the wheel profile issue, that's when we were like, well, how about 84s in 76s? We were like, the 76s are good, they're fast, but they're still like, it's a good pivot spacing, but the 90s are too much. And so when I was looking at my notes earlier, it was one of the first concepts I had in that initial list back from November was in 84, 76, 76, 76, 84. But I think we just were so enamored with the giant, the bigger 90 millimeter wheels for just making it look cool. And so that brings us to this guy. So I remember, maybe Billy, I don't remember, you'll have to tell me if you were a part of this, but the initial frame kind of like had the multiple rocker settings, or the pink frames did. It was like, that was part of the concept, was 2 different rockers, and we called the bigger one Mega Rocker. Mm-hmm. But when we went to the blue, do these blue prototypes have adjustable rocker, or can they do 80 millimeter wheels?
No, they're adjustable rocker. And
okay.
So I immediately was very excited about that. I was like, I'll skate the regular version for a minute, but I wanted like that that experience of the Mega Rocker. But yeah,
Yeah.
they don't run 80s because that would be like ultra rocker, but you'd have the differential between the middle rocker and the ends. It wouldn't really work very well.
Yeah, so I guess that makes this blue frame kind of like an in-between step to where we ultimately wound up, which we can talk about in a sec. But so at this point, yeah, Billy, when did we reach out to you? Do you remember when that was?
I think it was March or April, somewhere in there.
It was right when the blue frames are coming in.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we got the blue prototypes. They arrived March 28th of 2022. And I must have sent them to you guys like that week right away.
Yeah, I forget if I got wheels with them or I went to the local skate shop and got wheels or whatever. But I started out on the Street Invader 7684 combo, which are actually the 84 is like a little more tapered than the 76.
Yeah,
but I think your contact patch is still round, so it's not.
It's
you know, you still have a full profile or a full.
Everybody can see this, but it's close.
Yeah.
The black one is the 84. Yeah, it's less of that Magic Rocker sensation.
Yeah, Magic Rocker. That's the aggressive.
And then obviously in this picture, like I've got all bullet profile here. These are the FR Junk Freestyle wheels, which were bullet, which I loved. And then with the Endless 84 millimeter bullet profile. And then I did some exploration of what would an all round profile feel like on this frame. And so in order to make it work, I had to go down a wheel size. So here I'm skating 80s on the outside and 72s in the middle. And so because obviously, like we were saying, the 84s aren't really round. So this was, I think, the first time I tested like everything round. So yeah, maybe you guys can talk about, okay, so at this point we've solved our wheel spacing issue. So now we have a more, what I'd like to call it, a more intuitive, continuous rocker, where the rocking is more even. And we've solved our wheel profile issue. So maybe you guys can talk about like, what were your first impressions when you first got this? And what did you compare it to? Like, what was your reference point?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I had been skating a 5x80 and I'd only ever skated the round Street Invader wheels on the 5x80. Prior to that, I had only skated 4-wheel frames and just figured out all the wizard moves basically, and got myself the 5x80. Definitely felt like I was standing on top of a set of wheels. Like I felt the distance. Maybe it was that the wheels on the ends that kind of felt a little far away from my foot.
Yeah.
And then that was one of the main differences that I felt right away. Was it was like I was able to drop down into a 5x80 frame, and that feeling of like, oh, I just sunk down a little bit. The 84 is sticking up above the kind of UFS frame top, and so it comes up closer to the toe, and it just felt like it was right there, like it was opposable. Whereas with the 80, it was kind of this implement sticking out from my foot, and the 84 was just like right in there, and it was just an extension of my body, and that was like the feeling I initially had. And yeah, that's why I actually haven't tried the 80 millimeter on the arc frame, because I'm just like, I love the 84. Like it goes over stuff. It feels right on, like right at my foot, and I don't want to sacrifice that. So that was what I felt. I have more thoughts on the 76 spacing and everything, but Andrew, what was your predecessor, and like what were you skating right before, and then what did you, I guess you were skating the other prototypes, right?
I was, it was a rapid succession of things for me though. So I was on the Endless 4x100 on the FR1 to the sorry, I had just picked up I got an incredible deal on an old SX boot, and I picked up a 5x76 frame to skate that, and I'd been skating that for like a month or so, and then we got these
which 5x76 did you have?
It was the Roca 5x76, and I was skating those on revolvers, the 76 millimeter revolvers. And then it was the two 165 prototypes that you put together, Brad, and then this blue frame. And certainly out of that whole batch, the blue frame I felt most at home on, and it was on this boot that I was really getting to love, which was the SX, which I had put an Intuition Premium in, and that's, you know, it's by far the most comfortable and performant boot that I have. So it all just kind of came together really nicely. Relative to 5x76, I don't know if I felt sort of the same sensation of being like dropped in quite as much. The thing that was most noticeable for me was the speed. That was the thing that I couldn't get past, is the fact that it seemed, so my prior experience with Street Invaders were like on my FR1s, and they're brand new 4x80, and I just remember riding those things in the ground thinking they were kind of like, you know, like soft eraser rubber, kind of like soft wheels. I'm like, oh, I need something better. But going back to them, I was amazed at how much I loved them, actually, and how fast they were on this frame. And I was like, it was this weird cognitive dissonance of like, wait a minute, that's not what these are supposed to do. and I loved it dearly. So it was mostly the speed, and I loved the round profile for how I could kind of cheat a little bit on the swivels. It just had this nice slide to it that I really, really loved. The feeling was nice. So those are the things that I remember from that.
It's good that you bring up the speed, because you know, one thing that I always try and focus on with all my designs is that no matter what the specific application of the frame is, I feel like it should always just be generally fun to skate. Like you should just be able to cruise around in whatever I make, and it shouldn't feel slow or sluggish or, you know, unresponsive. And so it was really important for me to make a 5-wheel frame that didn't feel like a ton of bricks on my foot, but also, yeah, you could cruise down the street and would maybe, like, you know, hopefully be almost as fast as 4x90. And I think, you know, one thing I want to touch on is with these first prototypes, you know, they're all just kind of flat. This is like what a lot of the endless 80, 90, 100 frames look like. But a detail we probably glossed over is this frame has a little bit of a, you know, a shape at the base. And I had adapted this styling from my 90 UFS design. And I had noticed that, like, structurally it did certain things for like the stiffness of the design, and just made things really responsive, and also it kind of looks cool. But yeah, with this design, I think I really challenged myself to create something that would be both lightweight, really rigid and stiff, so that way it would be responsive and would have that kind of like extension of your leg feeling, but then also be fast. And I think that brings us to why this thing is called the Arc Frame. And so, Billy, if I'm not mistaken, you're the one that came up with this.
We were definitely brainstorming for a long time, but yeah, that was like the word that I felt described the trajectory that you could make with these frames. And yeah, I think we backronymed something as well. Backronymed acceleration, response, and control. Yep. Which I dig, and I think there's something about the short height of the frame plus the additional kind of reinforcements, or, you know, buttressing and internal bracing, that like the triangulation is pretty good. I think when you go even smaller wheels, you're like even more triangulated, but your wheel size is kind of small. There's like this balance you have to have. If you had gone with a bigger wheel, you know, maybe, well, first of all, it would be just a lot of frame. It'd be, you know, if there were 380s in the middle there, like this is now like a big frame. And so, yeah, I was just thinking about the 72 pivot spacing and the 76 pivot spacing, and how there's something that just didn't work about that, did work about this. And, you know, the places we came from on an 80 and a 76 5-wheel frame, both of us, like, feeling like this is cool, but, you know, mine was like, this is cool and fast, but kind of a lot to hold on to my foot. And yours was probably nice and swivelly, but not as fast as you'd like. And yeah, so I do wonder if you would have tried a 7684 with the totally rectangular frame, would that have felt slower, like a true apples to apples? And I guess you kind of did with the 7690, right? Like it really did change something, it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, this design has internal bridges that definitely stiffen it up.
And on the ends, it drop down, right? Like in the front or the back of the frame?
This is just like
okay.
More of a standard thickness.
That's actually like a pretty important feature right there then.
Yeah. So as you guys know, like this is pretty. Is that the back? That's the back.
Right. And that actually got increased on the
pretty
production.
Thick. Like nobody makes frames with bases
to come down
this thick. And then also it's got the bridges between the center wheels. So this thing is, I mean, let's see if I can do this.
Yes, ring the bell.
It rings like a bell. There you go.
An important feature to any frame is, but yeah, it has that resonance for sure. But there's like, I wonder, obviously you're not going to go work backwards and isolate the variables, but that bridge across from wall to wall on the ends, so important, because that's what you push against mostly, is off of the toe, and it kind of like tracks the frame better. I think then on the SX boot, having those kind of wings or buttresses, just I think probably more so than a 165 frame, like it is braced directly against the boot instead of just triangulating the actual frame itself. I think it adds to it.
Yeah, definitely. And because the frame is flexing less on every stride, it's like you're getting more of that energy going into your push. And so I think that's why
less effort.
It feels a lot faster. And then also it's like when you're executing some type of move like a 3-turn, it's like again, because the frame is so stiff and rigid, when you're on a deep edge, the walls of the frame aren't racking and putting like a torsional load into your bearings, which will slow you down. So that's what makes it, I think, accelerate so quickly or maintain the momentum through a move like a 3-turn.
Like deflection of any kind.
Right.
It's not optimal as you load the bearings
and I think it's one of those things you don't notice on most frames until you compare it to a frame that is way stiffer.
Yep.
Like I didn't know what I was missing until I had skated the arc frame, and then it just felt like an extension of my foot.
Yeah. This is the thing I always try to tell people, and it's like, please trust us. We skated a million different things that are 5-wheeled, and there is something about this that is just different in terms of the speed and the enjoyment of it. You just don't have to work as hard. And it's, my test was do I want to drive to the basketball court that's half a mile from my house or skate there on my 5-wheel frame? Never once did I feel like I needed to do that with this frame. That was not the case for most
That's
of
a
them.
good point. Like, I'm definitely someone that leaves from my house every time I skate, if possible, like unless I'm, going to a faraway skate park. But sometimes that means 15, 20, 25 miles in a night to go do the group skate, skate out to Central Park, kind of wherever that is, and then do a big group skate, swivel around, skate all the way back. Like I was doing that on the 5x80. And initially I was doing that on a 4x100 and having the time of my life. I was like, rollerblading is dope. I forgot how good this was. Then I got the 5x80 and I was like, okay, I can see how this is more purpose built. I should probably just go, kind of stick close to home and swivel around. But definitely surprised myself with leading the group ride, of 70 people in Denver riding around the streets on these frames. Just like, shouldn't I be in the mid? Like what's going on here? Like what the glide and like just the responsiveness, because obviously a 5-wheel squirrels around a little bit underneath your foot a little more than a 4-wheel, right? Like it's just, it wants to dance, let's say. But even still, like in the like more mellow rocker orientation, it has that kind of endless, like that subtlety of an endless frame, which I will say is like a different feeling than like the Rocca frames or some of the other ones I've tried. But yeah, there was like this ability to urban skate on this skate because it also wasn't sticking out from the foot that much. It was kind of like underfoot, I guess is maybe the right word. Anyway, that speed, I think that's important.
That's an excellent segue into what I want to talk about next. So on this topic of speed, I think one of the things I started to kind of wrap my head around during this whole development testing process was this concept of the frame and wheels as a system, as opposed to just designing a frame and then you stick some wheels on it because I want there to be a certain size wheel because it looks cool, right? And so one of the reasons I think I really like 76 millimeter wheels is here's our 76 millimeter cloud wheel. And this is our 80 millimeter just bullet profile. They're both bullet profile. But I don't know if you guys can see this. This 76 millimeter wheel specifically has the core is bigger than the one on the 80. But if we were talking about, say, a hydrogen 80 millimeter wheel and a hydrogen 76 millimeter wheel, they both use the same exact core. So you end up getting, with the 80, you get more of this fat tire thing. So there's like more urethane to core. And so when you've got something like this, which has got more core relative to the amount of urethane, it makes the wheel stiffer, which makes the wheel faster. And so this 80 ends up weighing more than this, obviously, because there's more urethane, but it ends up kind of paying a penalty in speed and being a little more sluggish. So it's like this wheel might actually be the same speed as this wheel, just even though the 76 is smaller, it's stiffer. And so it kind of like makes up for that. And so another interesting thing I found kind of along this line of wheels and frame as a system is, let's see if I have an 84 millimeter wheel floating around here. I have a 90, but this will kind of give you the same idea. Our 84 millimeter wheels and our 90 millimeter wheels use the exact same core. And what I found was our 80 millimeter wheels, our 84 millimeter wheels weighed less than a hydrogen 80 millimeter wheel. So the combination of 76 millimeter wheels and the 84 millimeter wheels ended up weighing less than 5x80, which you might intuitively think would be faster, right? Would be faster, and you would think maybe be about the same weight or something. So it was like, when I did the math, it was like, obviously we made a light, like the frame itself was 100 grams lighter than most of the competitor wheel frames. But when you added in the weight of the wheels, the whole system weight was something like 130 grams lighter than the, another 5x76 or 5x80 frame. And so it's like, I really feel like that adds to this, what someone has referred to as like light feet, or a sense of floating that the Arc gives you. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Like, did you guys notice the weight difference compared to other 5-wheel frames you had been skating? And like, how did that impact your skating?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about the core size of the wheels is very interesting, because you've got the core to urethane ratio optimized on both of those wheel sizes. Like the 80 has the same core as the 76 with more urethane. The 84 has the same core as the 90, or well, with less urethane, right? Like
Yeah,
each
right.
like 76 and 84 are like the same core but less urethane as 80 and 90, right? It's like
Yes.
ratcheted down. So you've optimized your ratio. And I think that's a really interesting point, because otherwise you're dealing with kind of the standard wheel sizes, and 76 and 84 are like non-standard wheel sizes to some extent, right? Relative to 80 and 90. And 76 could be debated, I guess. But in any case, you're optimizing for that. And you essentially took like something that was 90, 80, 80, 80, 90, wore it down by 4 mil, or however many, 4 or 6 millimeters, and then squished it back together again. And now you have this kind of like worn wheel feeling, where like your skate feels light when your wheels are kind of worn down, like you're just at the course almost. That's kind of like how I think about it, is you've got more core, less urethane, and the wheels just kind of spin faster. Like, a bike wheel with a really thick tire is going to spin slower than one with a really skinny one, and mostly spokes and wheels and like empty space. The other factor that I think adds to that feeling that Bass referred to as light feet is cutouts. First of all, reducing the amount of weight that's far away from the foot. And then on the frame that you had that didn't have wheels on it, you can see the internal reliefing along the axles that essentially like thins the frame as it gets further out.
Right.
Obviously not around the axles, but between the axles. And that just like concentrated the mass closer to the foot. And reduced it as it got further away, and kind of
that's exactly right. It's like most of the mass is like, this upper third of the frame, whereas I've taken mass away from all the wheels, right? But still kept them fast for those very reasons we're talking about, where it's like you're optimizing the size of the core relative to the amount of urethane to kind of like not take a big speed hit. But then, and so it's like you don't have all your weight isn't here, your weight is here. And so if people remember maybe their high school physics with like moment of inertia, it's like the farther the load is, if you think of a pendulum, right? Your leg is like a pendulum. And so it's like, if you take a little bit of mass and then you maybe hang it off your foot, it feels a lot heavier than if you put that same that same amount of mass, like say around your ankle, right?
Yeah. Think about a sledgehammer.
Yes.
But like which end you hold the sledgehammer from matters a lot in terms of how heavy it feels. But it's the same weight. Like you're moving that sledge like closer to your foot, but the object is still this long. So it's like, where is the weight?
Right.
I mean, that's like obviously exaggerating the situation, but there are definitely some frames where it's reinforced further out versus further up, and there's just different choices to be made with that. And I think this one is very interesting in that regard, that it moves the material further up, I guess, closer to the foot.
Right. And I think, for me, as somebody that suffered a knee injury a few years ago, and it's been through this process of like recovery and healing, it's like I lost so much strength in terms of my tendons and my muscles that just doing things like, lifting my leg off the ground with a heavy skate on it, it caused some pain for a while. And so what I was finding was that with this lighter setup that had the mass concentrated closer to the bottom of my foot, it took much less effort for me to say, engage my hip flexors and lift my leg off the ground. Or if you think of it like you're swinging your leg during a lion or something, or maybe like an S move for wizard skating. When you swing your leg this way, if it's got a bunch of mass hanging off the end of your foot, it's harder to bring it back the other way, right?
Yeah, it'll spin you all the way around. Like it is a counterweight in that. And do you need it to be? Yeah, is the question.
And so I feel like you can accelerate and change direction faster when there's less of that mass hanging off the end of your foot. And I think that's part of where the response control part of the ARC acronym comes into play. At least that's how I feel it. Dan says, endless playing friends, high EQ. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, do you have that anything on that topic of feeling like light feet or just sort of forgetting about the frame being attached to your foot even at all? Like, how far do you take it?
Well, so this is a place where I'm comparatively insensitive. Like I skate the NR100. It's a frame I love dearly, and I can go between frames, and in general, I'm like, yeah, these are all fine. But I will say, recently, my experience with the advanced, trying the 180 advanced, and then coming back to things like the ARC, then I can really, really feel it. And in terms of like level of fatigue and how much exertion I need to do to do the moves that I want to do, there's a very measurable difference. Like it feels very different, and so I appreciate the comparatively light frame a lot in ways that I hadn't noticed it before. I didn't suffer anywhere near as bad an injury as you did, Brad, but I had an overuse injury. Like I think it was earlier this year, and coming back to it afterwards, it was nice to have something a little lighter to skate. Definitely preferred the ARCs after that.
Yeah,
you do have to kind of be careful with it too. It's like
Yep.
they go exactly where you tell them to go, and if you don't tell them where to go, they might go in places you don't want them to go. It's like they're kind of, you do sort of forget about them a little bit. Like I skate other 5 and 6 wheel frames, and I'm very conscious so that I have a large attachment on my foot. And then like, and I mean very large. Like I have some ridiculous skates, but yeah, like can skate like urban techie, jump on, jump off kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, like my hip flexors on the front don't feel like I strained them like they would on like a 5 or 6, like a heavier 5 or 6 wheel frame. Like if you're jumping up and doing little toe jams or trying to do like kind of more street oriented wizard skating moves, like you want to be able to hop up onto stuff and still have room to do other things. Like that shouldn't take your entire energy unless it's like a big hop. Like you want to jump in a controlled manner versus just kind of hucking your body, with these big attachments, like up onto, ledges or obstacles or whatever. Like, I think it definitely does make a difference. Yeah.
So I want to transition the conversation here. So at some point, Christopher brings up a good point here about these frames, the production frames at least, can also fit 80 millimeter wheels on the outside. And so up to this point, we've all been skating these blue prototypes, and they didn't allow the use of 80 millimeter wheels. So at some point here, we made a switch from
was it like June?
This being adjustable for rocker to being adjustable for wheel size. And so
what made you think of supporting the 80? Because I know you wanted adjustable rocker, but was it like, oh shoot, the 84 is maybe going to be hard for people to get? Was that?
Yeah, that's what it was. Part of that conversation about wheel availability, wheel versatility. Like especially in South America, I had noticed that people that were buying the Endless 80 frame were never setting them up 4x84 just because they couldn't get 84 millimeter wheels. So they would always put on 80 millimeter wheels. So I think I was looking through my notes, and I had an early note where I had made this observation that, hey, maybe we could have 2 different wheel sizes here if the rocker axle was just straight up and down, and we just used it to go from 84 to 80 basically. And so I think because we had this experience making these custom blue axles to fix the rocker, that's when I realized, like, hey, we can kind of have our cake and eat it too. We can have 80 or 84 millimeter wheels by flipping the one rocker axle, or we could make a special rocker axle, which gives us some in-between rocker settings. And so Obviously, you can only use these silver axles when you're using an 80 millimeter wheel, but it still gives you a lot of options. So if you're somebody who wants to play with the more extreme rockers or asymmetric rockers, like let's say you try
Extreme rockers. I like
you
it.
like the extreme, yeah.
Extreme. Well, just
Yeah.
the phrase, but yeah, 80 millimeter wheel basically has 3 positions available, right?
Yeah.
And the 84 has just the one up position. Otherwise,
Right.
it gets too close to the frame and to the foot. But yeah, that's pretty insane to have. Insanely cool, I should say, to have 3 different positions for a wheel in a frame. I mean, that's kind of unheard of, right? I guess who else has different types of rocker ball axles? I don't know if anyone's gone to that level of introducing the interstitial rockers between 80 and 84. And actually, 80 could be all the way up. You'd have 4 positions for an 80 millimeter wheel.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
mega extreme. I think Powerslide has done like a 6-way adjustable rocker axle, but I didn't want to get tweaky with that. One thing I don't know.
Yeah, rotational, or there's I've
Yeah.
had a triangular position, but it really was only the top and the 2 bottom.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
These are just 2-position rocker axles, and we used these are compatible with like a standard FR rocker axle, or they probably are. I think some of the Powerslide ones are similar. So if you ever lose these, not the silver ones, but you lose the black ones that come with your arc frame, you could, get a replacement FR one anywhere in the world. So that was part of it.
Because that's definitely a concern, is losing, the male or female part of the axle and being like, oh gosh, what do I do? And yeah, that addresses Dan's kind of point. Like even the axles are, standard, right?
Yeah, I think in general, I try not to make products that are exclusive, in the sense of I don't want to exclude people. I don't want to exclude people based on their skill level. I don't want to exclude people based on, where they live and what they have access to in terms of skate shops, or what wheels they can get. I want things to. I think our goal should be to bring more people into our big skate family, have more people enjoying 5-wheel frames and exploring these things, and figuring out what they can do. I think
if your mobility is, or you're a beginner, going right into a big chunky 5-wheel frame with big wheels on it, it's going to be very challenging. So that actually, the lightweight of the frame in some ways makes it a little more accessible. The learning curve is a little easier. You're going to injure people less with the product from muscle strains and stuff. Like I strain myself all the time because I'm chucking big frames around, and so I don't know, there's maybe a side effect there, but
looks like this guy points out that those hexagonal rocker axles have 4 heights. But
there's top, bottom, and then the 2 sides. In theory, your rocker is different when it's closer or further away. But
we have Brett Davies with us tonight. Hey, Brett, thanks for tuning in. He's in the UK, so he's probably up very early.
What time is it?
That is quite late or
very,
early.
very, very early. So I appreciate you being here, man. I'm glad you like the frames. Alexi's here with us tonight. What's up, Alexi?
Yo. And I saw he was here too. And we got Brock and
Or is this Drew?
It's Drew.
Oh, it could be Drew. I don't know.
Who's the more sarcastic one?
I could have sworn I got Brock energy from it, but I don't know. He said that's my boy, and I figured because we skate all the time. But I don't know. A man rocker is interesting.
Definitely Drew. All right.
Okay. I don't know though. Anyway.
All right. So we covered a lot of our design goals, I think, as we got to, So at this point, we've changed our wheel configuration. We've changed our wheel spacing. We've changed our rocker configuration. I remember Andrew and I had a number of conversations where I was like, should we get rid of the ability to have Mega Rocker on the 84 millimeter? And it was just like, I was like, I'm just going to do it. I think the 80 millimeter just makes it more accessible and inclusive for people, like Dan was saying.
And
but
you wouldn't have to accommodate that bigger wheel going further up, right? Like,
yeah.
is that,
Yeah.
So let's go back to something here. So on a 165 frame, we get a raised heel on the boot, which gives us some heel lift, right? But on a UFS frame, especially on a UFS boot like this SX, it's a flat bottom boot. So have either of you guys ever skated the SX on a flat frame before? Have you ever skated on a frame that has no tilt?
Yeah,
No.
I skated a ground control 80, 4x80. I mean, it was fine. I like the pretty flat feeling, because I think when I go backwards, I feel like my heel being closer to the wheel that's steering is like more intuitive. With 165, I always felt a little like removed from the rear wheel. But you definitely, when it's pure flat, like your ankle is in such a strange flexed position all the time that you're like, it feels like you're skating through your heels.
It's like I don't know if I can do this, but like if this is my foot, right? Like our feet are better. We have more mobility flexing this way than we do, bending our ankle up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're better off starting in a raised, how would it look, raised heel position. So when I decided to make the UFS frame, I thought about this, whether I wanted to have it be a flat interface, with the boot parallel with the ground, or if I wanted to give some tilt. And obviously other frames on the market, like the Wizard frame, have a tilt to it, and like brands like Rocca or Roca, however you want to pronounce it, also do. But what I ended up doing is I took my SX boot off the frame. I put my foot in it. I put it on the ground, and I had the SX on one foot, and then I had my FR1, which is a raised heel boot, on the other foot. And I stood on my carpet and I would like lift up one leg and just kind of feel like my foot position. And I was like, okay, this is really like flat sucks. It's not a good ergonomic skating posture. There needs to be some heel lift, but how much? And so I have these like, let's see if I don't have one laying around. I have these plastic business cards that are about like 20 thousandths of an inch thick. And I got like a bunch of them, and I started like shimming the heel of my boot.
I remember this now.
Yeah.
Did you prop up the FR boot so that was like in a fixed heel lift position? Yeah. Like shim that and then see when your like hips align kind of thing.
It's exactly what I did. I just kept shimming that boot until I was like, okay, this feels like natural. It feels like what I'm used to, not like I'm on my tippy toes, but not, my heel isn't sunken down. And I couldn't tell you how much it ended up being. All I know is it was like so many business cards thick. And I basically did the math and then just like, translated that into like whatever angle this ends up being. But so if anybody wants to know, no, the amount of tilt is not the same as a Wizard frame. It's not the same as a Roca frame. It's whatever felt good that day. I stuck the plastic business cards underneath the heel.
Do you have a shock absorber, Intuition heel shock absorber, and then in the FR? Like, we got to know, like,
yes,
apples to apples with your insoles and your shock absorbers.
So I did try it both with and without the Intuition heel pad.
Good, yeah.
Because I knew that some people skate with it and some people skate without. I'm somebody that does not have. So Intuition V2 SX2 boot, I have a Superfeet insole under the liner. Shout out to Joey McGarry from Mushroom Blading. And then I've got no heel pad. And so I've dialed in like that first, and then I put the heel pad in, and I was like, is it too much or does it still feel good? And so I kind of found like a compromise where both positions felt good to me.
Heel pad outside the liner on top of the insole, or I'm just curious how that.
Yeah,
I've never
I
known
had-
how people do the insole outside the liner with a shock absorber.
Yeah, I think that's how it's typically done.
Yeah, so it'd be like insole on the bottom of the boot, then heel pad, and then liner.
Then liner. Okay, that makes sense. And it'll stay in place that way because you got
Yeah.
the Velcro. Okay.
And I think for completeness, I probably also took my insole out and just had it with heel pad and liner just to see if that
Cool.
was any different, because the insole always adds like a tiny bit of heel lift. Dan says that Tilt Origin has home cooking vibes. It totally was. It's a very scientific approach here. So that was what got put into this, and I don't think we ever changed it. And I don't think, I mean, Andrew, do you remember us discussing that when you got these, or did we just never think about it ever again?
I forget like when exactly that came up, but I know that I shared that I am for my SX, it's just the Intuition Premium with the super feed inside and no shock absorber. I want it as flat as possible, and that so and I wanted a tilt that corresponded to that. So all I know, once I put it on, it felt right. I know that much.
Yeah, I mean, Billy, when you skated it, I don't think I ever mentioned tilt to you. Did you
No.
ever notice that it was different than other frames, or did it just feel comfortable?
No, it felt comfortable. I didn't notice too much. Maybe a little flatter than like the Roka, but I'm not totally sure. I don't know.
I think it is.
I think there's maybe a little more tilt on what I was used to, and I was on like a Power Slide Next Trinity boot, which is a heel lift too, which I didn't love. So I liked the flat feeling, and I do use the shock absorber plus like a 3/4 length insole inside the liner, just to have room in the toes. But yeah, so it's a fair amount of lift, but I need the shock absorber because I like jumping downstairs. So
yeah. All right, I'm just looking at my my little outline here. Oh, so Arc ES.
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about the ES at all.
So
that was when the next I thought that was the first time you got the 80 millimeter wheels on the frame.
It was because I got these silver prototypes that I sent to you, which you gave to somebody who's probably might be in the chat.
Oh, I've loaned them out to a couple of people recently that are taller skaters. So I was like, well, I want you to try the ES because I want you to have like this different experience. And I'm actually curious. I've been skating the blue one because I feel like it's very dancey. For me, I'm on a 44 boot and I'm 6 feet tall. So it definitely feels underfoot for me. Like this
Arc ES.
Arc ES. I was curious, like, were you already thinking about a longer version, or was it feedback that I was giving where I was like, this is cool, but I'm tipping a little bit, like I'm a tall skater, and like, how could we accommodate that? I was curious if that was.
What size is your foot, by the way? What size boot are you in?
I'm in a 44, 200, like 28.5 centimeters.
So I think I kind of had a hunch that the arc, the standard arc that we had all been skating, was probably most suitable for somebody that was like a size 39 to like a 43. And actually, our friend Daniel here, he first got the arc standard.
165.
Yeah.
And Dan's tall.
He's tall and he's got a big foot. I think he's a 44 as well. So
I think we figured out we're the same size feet, actually.
Yeah. So I knew I needed to make something that catered more to a bigger foot. And so help me remember this thought process, Andrew. Like, did we just right off the bat knew that we were just going to like stretch things out and make a longer wheelbase, or did we even talk about bigger wheels at all?
I don't think we really talked about bigger wheels. The 90 ES was was something, I don't recall what the timeline was of when you put out the 90 ES, but that was certainly a top of mind. And how, it's nice to break out of the pattern of you must use wheels that are jammed within a fraction of a millimeter next to each other, and that's how you define how long your frame is. Like that's nonsense. You don't have to do that.
Exactly.
Well, as soon as you skate it, it's not. And
It's
to
right,
your point, you were trying smaller wheels on, more spaced out wheels and enjoying it, frankly, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was, we had that reference point of the 90 ES design, which is like a stretched out endless 90. And I think, so I was thinking in my head, this is or rather the other one, this is a 5x76 equivalent frame in terms of it's a little bit longer, like it's 316 millimeters wheelbase, I believe. And so I thought, okay, if this is my 5x76 equivalent, then the Arc ES should be the 5x80 equivalent. And so what we were able to do is space the center pivots. We kept the same configuration, 84, 76, 76, 76, 84, but we just spaced out those center wheels. And so this is 324 millimeter wheelbase, just like a 5x80 frame would be, but it sits lower because you're on 76 millimeter wheels. It rides, I would say, faster. It's a much less weight. I think it's well over 130 grams lighter, maybe even as much as 150 grams lighter compared to some frames for total setup weight. And unlike, when we were doing, our initial development, we kept trying to tighten up this spacing from wheels 1 to 2 and make it more even with wheels 2 and 3, right? But what's unique about the endless or the Arc ES is that we were able to get to a perfectly even wheel spacing for the whole frame. So wheels 1 to 2 is the same spacing as wheels 2 to 3, as 3 to 4, or 4 to 5. So this one has, this is going to skate and feel probably just like a 5x80 frame would in terms of like the continuity of the rocker.
Yeah, the contact points are, I think, 81 millimeters apart, right?
They're
like
exactly
the pivot spacing is 81,
yep.
which is exactly what a 5x80 is. Yep. And I think that's a crucial differentiator. I think they do behave pretty differently. Whereas like the standard frame has a pretty unique tight swivel underfoot, that the ES kind of stretched that out and in some ways stabilized it, like for different types of skating, right? Like you get almost a slalom feel sometimes with the smaller wheels closer together is like kind of how I think of it. And then the ES stretched it out, and all of a sudden for me, it slowed down my movements a little bit. Like it stretched them out. It kind of like felt less like I was spinning and more like I was carving, and actually could. Yeah. It just changed the dynamic of it for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's because of the pivot spacing and where, the amount of leverage you have, based on where that wheel sits under your foot.
Mm-hmm.
Wheels that are closer to the center of your foot, the skate is more unstable, which makes it more swivelly and sensitive to small movements of your foot. Whereas think anti-rocker, right? You got your wheels all the way at the end. If you want
the least
pivot, you really gotta lean. So, so
that's
that was really.
I was just gonna say, like, originally I was gonna say with the 72 wheels, I bet that's why. I mean, your wheelbase, right, is the distance between the two wheels that are contacting, and on a rockered frame, it's only 2 at a time, aside from
3.
Depressing the wheels, kind of like when they smush. But that 73 mil spacing, with 72 with the gap, isn't it wild that just going from 73 millimeters to 77 millimeters, and then jumping just a little bit to 81?
It's a huge difference in feel.
It's insane. Like how are our bodies able to adapt so quickly, but also discern that level of difference? The way that you could tell the difference between the rocker on the end versus underfoot, despite it being just a few millimeters different.
Right.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating. And to that point about being able to tell the difference of where a pivot point sits relative to your foot, even on the UFS versions of the frame, there's a 3 millimeter front back adjustment. The 165 versions of the frame have much more adjustment because the 165 standard is not so standard. So like, where the frame sits on an adapt boot is going to be different than where it sits on an FR1. So we have like those longitudinal slots on the frames. Where I don't know if you could see this. We played with some funky stuff. I don't know if you could tell the spacing of these slots is not standard.
Yeah, some of those look closer together.
Yeah, we were playing some games where you could like get a 3 millimeter offset by mounting to a 7-hole boot. It got really nerdy. But after that initial batch of prototypes, like, I switched gears and focused on the UFS prototype. But when I finally made the final 165 pre-production parts, they had the vertical slots. But yeah, so that was the Arc ES really was like, let's keep this recipe intact. Like we've got everything so optimized. Let's give everyone the exact same experience, regardless of their foot size or their skate size. Yeah, and like you guys said, like just because a frame needs to be longer doesn't mean the wheels need to be bigger.
Yeah, you really do lose something potentially too, because you're also making it taller if you go to
Yes.
bigger wheels. And that I think was the other piece to it, the other constraint. They're thinking we really liked this configuration, we wanted to keep it low, so why mess with that?
So Marco here has a great question. Why don't let's talk about wheels. So obviously we've got this mixed wheel configuration. What were you guys noticing with respect to wheel wear? What were you doing with your wheel rotations? I have some interesting theories regarding kind of the science or the physics of things that I'll shed some light on, but I'd love to hear from you guys about this.
Yeah, how about you, Andrew?
Okay. So I do what Dan talks about here, which is I rotate in place, or rather I go across the frame. So wheel 1 on the right goes to the left, and just across. I don't tend to rotate, front and back, anything like that, and I let it wear the way that it's going to wear. And what's interesting about it, and I measured this, with calipers for a while, and then I got lazy, but is that it doesn't just keep. It's not like the front of the frame just slowly, like, sunk into the ground or anything like that. It settles into a pattern. My hypothesis, based on testing, on the SX and then my FR with like a heel lift and all this other stuff, it's essentially sort of like a fingerprint. It's like a footprint, essentially. It's unique to how you sit atop your skates, and it settles into something that just kind of, you're wearing your own pattern essentially, and it doesn't really deviate from that eventually. That's been my experience anyway. And the whole time with the Arc frames, it's always felt the same to me. I don't feel like it's changing as I wear it in, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah,
I definitely.
Go ahead, Bill. I was just going to quickly say, like, that's probably one of the questions we get a lot, which is, will I have problems with wheel rotation because the wheels are different sizes? Go ahead, Billy.
Oh, no, I mean, I think if you're used to like the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 3, 2, 4 rotation, where you're going kind of, you're taking the wheel 1 and moving it kind of back.
Yeah.
I think that's really a flat frame rotation to like kind of preserve flat. Like it definitely doesn't accentuate rocker. You probably have wheels that aren't touching the ground if you're doing that. Like I believe that's probably the case. So even with 4-wheel frames, I always rotated in position. I guess in place means you don't even move from right to left. I do move from right to left in the same position, because I think I do more swivels on my right foot. So I know that if I just let the right wheels wear down, they will wear down faster.
Yeah.
than my left because I have a bias. So I usually just move the whole frame over because it's fewer bolts. Or
I do that with
seems-
5-wheel frames too.
It's probably not good because you're changing the position of the frame every time and you're cracking those bolts loose. But I definitely find that the front wheel I wear down a lot more than the rear wheel, and then
I'm the
these
same.
have a slight gradient to them. Just to I basically wear the frame like that. Like it goes from in line to, and I think that's due to dancing and swiveling, not due to striding and skating. But I do find even on like a distance setup, I push through the toes. Like it's probably just the way that our bodies are shaped. That's why we have a heel lift. We use our toes for control, not our heels. So yeah, and that's the thing that I find is that it's not even like they're all wearing evenly. I do end up with sort of a ramped front rocker, which I actually like because then I can just whip on that second wheel, like a whip spins around on that second wheel, and it works out pretty well.
Yeah. One thing I noticed was, so I tend to rotate wheels on my frames a lot because I always want to preserve the as designed rocker. So I do on my 4-wheel frames do the 1 to 3, 2 to 4 thing, but because I'm probably rotating like every other skate session or every third skate session, the amount of wear is so minimal that I never get like an anti-rocker type of experience.
Gotcha.
But what's interesting on the Arc is, so here's a 76 millimeter wheel and here's an 84 millimeter wheel. And so normally, like you're saying, Billy, like most people wear their outer wheels more because, we push through our heels, or like if we're skating backwards, we're pushing through our toes, or like on a stride, you might do a toe push. And so it makes sense that, there's more force on those outer wheels. So they're going to be more wear. What's interesting about these two wheel sizes is the 84 is going to rotate less than the 76 for a given distance of skating. So while if these were the same size, you would wear this one more, because this one is rotating less. It kind of like wears at a rate that is more even to this wear rate compared to like a 4-wheel setup with all, or like, a setup with all the wheels the same size. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I would love to see a test where you have a rollerblade chassis
machine
with every wheel. No, attach it to your car. Like I want it like getting miles on real streets, like, and you would see over time, like some of the wheels would stop wearing because they're not actually touching the ground, like, I don't know, maybe you do one of each wheel size on its own thing and you see like, over the same distance, how much did each wheel wear? I think that would be phenomenally interesting. Like they'd wear pretty quick at those speeds, but
probably. So for me, I never noticed the rocker really changing when I just stuck to my normal. I think I was doing like, what was I doing? 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 2 to 4 type of thing. But some other times I would just flip in place or do like you do, Billy, like where it just goes across the skate straight across. It's like doing a combination of like two different rotation patterns, and it would always just feel the same to me. I never would get like mega rocker or anything like that.
I don't know what that is about. I think it's probably I just swivel on asphalt.
Yeah.
Because there's just that's what's there. And
All right. So I think now is probably before we open it up to questions from people that may be in the chat here. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you guys feel we need to cover? Is there anything? Oh, who is this frame for? And who is it not for? What does it do and what does it not do?
You want to go first, Andrew?
Oh boy.
Andrew's gonna take this one.
I'm mellow now. I'm not like old man yelling at a cloud. So all my spicy takes on this are now they've now left my head. I mean, this is without a doubt it, and the ArcCS, which of course is another call, are without a doubt like the most accessible 5-wheel frames. They're enjoyable to just skate around. You don't have to just do wizard tricks all day long, although I like doing that. You know, it's great for a street skate. It's great for whatever you want to do. It is therefore a general purpose tool. It's not something for ultra techie specific types of skating. This is designed to be something that is going to feel great, whatever you want to do with it. If you're looking for something very techie in particular to do, I don't know, particularly in vogue tricks, maybe look elsewhere. But this is still pretty good for that too, I gotta say.
Billy, what's your take?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there's definitely different personalities between the two arc frames, the standard and the ES. And I think, obviously they will both work on most boot sizes. So in terms of who it's for, I think the ES is obviously for someone with a bigger foot, someone maybe taller, who wants a more stable kind of, platform to stand on, but also a little bit more stable rocker in a way. Like it is a little more mellow. And I think the ES is also for that person who wants to maybe learn toe presses a little bit more, because it does extend the wheel a little further out in front versus down underneath, right down underneath your foot. There's like an interesting fulcrum point where you can do more of like a aggressive or slalom toe maneuver versus like a more ski looking toe maneuver where your ankles are flexed versus pointed. There's like a difference there. Yeah. So I think the ES is kind of for more you're looking to do more, kind of progressive, big wizard types, swivels and movements. And the standard frame is definitely more for somebody maybe coming from slalom or maybe coming from a 4x80, 4x90 kind of rockered setup, wants that underfoot feeling. But the nice thing about both of them, in my experience, is that they're also urban frames. Like they're not tennis court frames. Like they can be, and you can do some really snappy, quick maneuvers because of the kind of underfoot feeling and the tight swivel pace, pivot spacing, and all of that. Like I can just snap certain movements in ways that I have to really, kind of chuck the, other types of frames around. So yeah, it just all adds up to like just a very lively kind of like all day skate, like all day frame, I guess. Like you can skate around town, you can hit swivel spots on the way out, wherever you are, and you can kind of jump on stuff, do some urban things without really fatiguing kind of like some of the key muscles in the hips and stuff that you might if you tried to do that on a bigger 5 or 6 wheel frame. And so yeah, I think that makes it pretty approachable, like you said, very all purpose, but definitely still like has the spirit of a swivel 5-wheel. Like, you're going to be expressing crazy movements as you go through town, but you're going to be moving swiftly. So yeah.
All right. So let's see if we got some questions here from Instagram. All right. I've got a few here. Let me throw up some fun stuff here. All right. Live Q&A time. All right. So we'll kick this off. If anybody in the chat has questions that they want to ask any of us, feel free to post them and we'll throw them up on the screen and answer them. I got a couple, actually. Marco, who is here in the chat, he had a question. He said, do you recommend the Arc ES for all around urban skating? He wrote plus or minus 25 kilometers and a size 11.5 US, or is it only for wizard skating?
Well, I think I just addressed that pretty well, but I easily cover 25 miles in a night. I mean, maybe not easily cover, but like I'm covering 20 to 25 miles in a night comfortably. Like I don't understand why bumpy roads don't feel as bumpy as they should feel in this frame. But yeah, there's a endurance aspect that is preserved. I think maybe it's in part due to the stiffness of the frame. But yeah, I'm definitely of the opinion that you can skate this thing all day for sure.
Yeah. If anybody has seen Jim from Rerolling Inline's YouTube channel, he's a big fan of the arc frames. He uses them for his urban skating. And I think he told me that it might be his favorite frame over the Endless 90 that he was pretty stoked about.
That was a fascinating evolution in his thinking over time. It was really
Yeah.
fun to watch.
Yeah, it has. Someone wrote, is there any benefit to skating arc frames on a flat heel versus a raised heel? So I guess maybe I'm just gonna put some words in his mouth. Maybe he's asking, would it be better to have a raised heel 165 arc experience or a Seba SX CJ flat UFS boot arc experience?
Or even the UFR versus the SX.
Or the UFR, yeah.
Right, is pretty common. But yeah, Andrew, you could probably speak to that because I haven't skated on anything but the SX.
My first order response to this is that you got to find a boot that fits you. That matters most, and if it happens to be that a 165 boot is the best thing for you, you should do that. That's my opinion about it. For me, the SX is the best fit, and that's my preference. I would say that in general, and my preferences reflect that. Like, I feel like 165 boots feel a little toey at times. So I really like the flat boot. It's what I go to. But first thing is you got to have a boot that fits you as well as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've chosen this setup for my arc setup. I was skating the 165 arcs on a twister boot for a while with an Intuition Premium. And I really liked that setup. I felt that the twister was a really just like solid platform. So I would say if you're going to choose a 165 boot for arc, the Twister XT gets my vote. I've never put an arc frame on an FR1 and I skate FR1s all the time. I think, I just got so enamored with the Twister arc setup, and then this is probably my preferred one. Just again, this fits really well, and I've had this boot for a long time, so I'm really used to it. So yeah,
I had to get the white boot, mostly because it looks amazing, but also because I started realizing that all the other variations of the CJ boot that I had, or of other, like the integrated liner one, or just like I had like a carbon boot, like nothing fit. I couldn't get a wide toe box on any other skate. And that's just, I had to double down. And I've noticed my SX boots are actually, my original ones are starting to delaminate in more places than I had realized. But I will say a plug for anyone trying to fit their feet that are maybe wide in the toe box, a 3/4 length insole is super, super cool. This is stiff. It's like their Power Step athletic version or the running one. And it just frees up room in the toe box, especially if you have a liner already in there. It should be squishy and soft and work out. But I can't really skate with any full length insole because it's just too much material.
That's a great tip.
Just
all right,
something that helped me. Yeah,
we got to appease Drew here. He really wants to know about the Arctopus.
The Arctopus.
It's pretty funny. I don't know.
Don't you have an octopus frame already?
We have the octopus
Kraken
frame.
Yeah,
right. I don't know. Maybe there needs to be an art frame for the arcs. We'll see, Drew. We'll see. Patrick says, for jumping on and off objects, would the Arc ES frame feel more stable than the 90 UFS frame? I would personally choose the 90 UFS because it has that enhanced flat setup, which is going to be a lot more stable than the Arc. What a lot of people don't realize is this is one of the longest frames I make, and it's also the most maneuverable
Right.
frame I make. So,
Wait, he was comparing the 90 UFS versus the Arc ES?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You
don't make a 90 UFS ES.
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay. I misheard what you said. That.
Yeah. But I would say the 90 UFS in that enhanced flat setup. So all rocker axles up. Yeah. All rocker axles up is going to be probably a little more stable for jumping off stuff. But I mean, Billy, you jumped off a bunch of stuff in that awesome Arc promo video you made. So it's definitely totally doable.
Yeah. I mean, I guess when you land, having something flatter would be like the 90 UFS probably.
Yeah.
But in terms of catching yourself if you're leaning too far forward and having a little bit of extension of your foot, or you're leaning too far back and your fifth wheel in the back catches you from looping out, I prioritize that personally.
Yeah.
Even if there is a bit of sometimes a squirm on landing, like a bigger drop. I mean, jumping onto stuff is pretty stable usually, hopefully. And actually for that, you almost do want a 4-wheel frame if you want to do like let's call it a swan stall center channel. You don't get that with this. Obviously, you have to pick a channel, and then the channels aren't as deep, right? Like it's on a 90, you'll have a bigger V to hook into, but I don't think that was the question. But I do notice that when I was urban skating a bunch with some friends, and we were stalling on stuff, and I was like, whoa, okay, like it wasn't as simple as what they were doing on their 4-wheelers.
So someone asks, any update on the Trinity Arc frame release date? So here is
look at that.
This is the Arc Trinity. This was our prototype. Stick it this way.
Arc Trinity is like almost religious sounding.
It kind of is. I mean,
maybe it's a religious experience.
This will be a religious experience for a lot of people. This thing is so damn stiff. I don't know, Billy, if you have access to a Trinity boot, but you'll have to try this at some point. It's so light and so stiff just because of, the nature of Trinity lets you can see that second wheel poking up above the frame in there. These are in production. I've got the standard Arc and Arc ES Trinity in production. It should be finished this fall. I just need to check in with the vendor and see where they're at. I forgot what the latest was, but send me a note on Instagram if you're curious about those dates, or email us and we'll try and get you some better information. Daniel says, sliders for Arc Standard ever? I don't think I'm gonna do that.
That's so much slider.
It's a lot of slider, and I don't know. Yeah,
it's a lot of friction to overcome.
Sorry, man.
Yeah,
just not gonna be happening.
Just commit to the grind.
How long has this been going for? It's been going since 6 p.m. This is actually a pretty long episode, but I feel like it's been pretty action-packed here. All right, here's a great question. Any plans for a 100-millimeter UFS frame? Billy and I were talking about this. I think you recently got a UFS 4x100 frame.
Yeah, I love it. I forgot how good 100 was. Yeah. I guess the short answer is yes, I do have plans. I think what it's going to be is like a special edition frame that might be pre-order only. There'll be a limited run. It'll be you either get it, you get in and buy it when it's available, or you never get it, type of thing. So I've got a design mostly done. I just have been so busy with a perfect segue of a question. Any product releases dropping this holiday season? You know what? I've got a new frame dropping tomorrow.
So, so everybody watch
That's
the
huge
Insta-
news.
Yeah, everybody tomorrow watch the Instagram. It's something that's been in the works for a while. I think people are going to be excited about it. It's going to come in some cool colors, and we have it. It's available to ship. So as soon as you see that post, you can buy it, and we'll ship it to you. So tomorrow, maybe tomorrow morning, we'll see. We'll see how ambitious I'm feeling in the morning for getting the post up, but around 9 or 10 Pacific time.
Okay, on the 100 mil, some design requests I have.
Okay, please.
Bridges
Yes,
and
they're in there.
braces. The bridges that you have between these two, obviously that would be different because 4-wheel, whatever.
Yep.
But would be not there would be no 3-wheel variation, I would think.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
This brace back here that we talked about, I don't think you could have one in the front, right? Because there's not a lot of room. But I feel like the more you could that vertical bracing, like I don't know that we talked about that.
I got you.
That convinced me.
Covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear about that.
It's going to be all the things you wish for. It's going to be
and more.
It's going to be a lighter and more responsive than any other 4x100 UFS frame. So, here's a good question. It's not the Pro frame. That's not the frame that I'm dropping tomorrow, but good guess. Let's see here. I scraped my sides on a 76 millimeter UFR, which is very tall compared to Trinity. I wonder if Trinity is almost too low. You know, we actually considered that it might be too low. And I think I could have gone a little lower on this design, but I decided against it because it's like, nobody wants to. I feel like so many moves, you're going to be at least 30 degrees over on an edge, and nobody wants to be scraping the boot. So that already is a problem for me. I don't know if you guys saw this. I ended up buying this like skateboarder shoe repair patch and putting it on the inside of my boot because I was always scraping the boot on power slides.
Anyway. Probably the outside of the boot too, right?
That was the inside.
Oh, so you're like, on like a one-footed
power slide,
backwards power slide. Yeah, I could see that really inflecting.
Yeah. So so there is a point at which it does become a little silly. How does a Trinity Arc feel compared to the 165 and UFS versions? A lot of how it feels is so contingent on the boot you're using. I personally feel that Seba CJ boot is probably the best choice for any type of flatland wizard flow skating. Even though I've got this on the Hardcore Evo, I don't think this is the best choice, even though a ton of people are going to skate this and they're going to love it. But for me, I feel like this is not, well, you know what it is. I mean, once you skate the foot cast, I mean,
the premium tongue, or you're not even on a premium.
I'm not even on the premium, but once
you might not
skate
even like
this,
that,
it's just so much ankle, lower calf support that anything else just feels like a fitness skate. So yeah, Andrew has been, not you, but the other Andrew has been skating this on a Tau, and he really liked that setup. I'm curious. I bet somebody with a Next and an Intuition Premium will have a really good time on this. So
that's what I was thinking. I want to see I want to see Ari on that Next boot with the Trinity just getting after it.
I'm sure. Any new wheel colors coming for Arc CS? So right now we currently have this, what I call Cloud. I am working on neon yellow. So I just gotta make it happen. So buy up all my Cloud wheels, and we'll get the yellow ones happening.
I have a question for you on the Arc CS. Although I guess maybe that should be a different conversation. On the Arc CS chat, I'd be interested to hear you talk about why the middle wheel is bigger. and if it has to do with the magic pivot spacing that the 76 mil, spacing achieves.
Yeah.
So I'd
It
file it
yeah,
for
we'll
some other time, but
yeah,
yeah.
we'll definitely hit that one in detail. But the short answer is speed and speed.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, if you're in the
I just-
60 mil. Yeah,
I just didn't want it to suck in terms of general skating around. And I feel like if you're a small-footed person, why do you get stuck with 72, 76, 80 millimeter setups? Like, why is that your only option if you're small-footed?
Mhm.
So obviously there's 76 millimeter wheels on the Arc CS, but yeah, it needed to satisfy that we can skate around, go on a group skate with our friends, skate down the trail for exercise, and not have it suck.
Totes.
Drew says Taos are like stiff Evos. Yeah, exactly. They do have kind of a taller, stiffer cuff. Anything else? We covered a lot of stuff. Let me see if I just have any other questions written down from folks.
Yeah, there were some questions about grinding and stuff like that, but I think that I actually I didn't mind grinding on these frames with the axle sticking out, spaces you out from the thing you're grinding. But also, why would you grind such a beautiful frame?
Yeah.
I had to see what it felt like on the silver frames, but I do regret it.
That's right.
Like 4 grinds, I was like, well, I know what it feels like, and now my frame will always look like this. So
yeah, let's see if there's any other questions hiding in here in the chat.
that's it.
I got a question.
Pablo has a good one, but
What's
it's too
that?
spicy. Do plastic frames have a place in Wizard?
Like an aggressive frame?
No,
I
a
think-
plastic 5-wheel frame.
That would
I mean,
suck. I
don't
just
make
think
plastic frames, but,
suck.
yeah.
Period. You know what? I tried an aggressive boot for the first time within the last few years. And it was the first plastic frame I had skated since 1999, I think. And I could not believe how slow it was and how not responsive it was. Like, I will never,
I do agree.
you will never see Endless making a plastic frame. Just will never.
You can
happen.
bolt plastic onto your metal frame, but that's the extent. Yeah.
I think Daniel summed it up quite nicely. I mean, it's just be awful. All right, Drew's got to go. See you, Drew. Thanks for hanging. DJ Drift King says beautiful things are meant to be defiled. I don't know about that.
Then why are
Chris
soul
Butter,
plates?
spicy plates.
I guess.
I'm not touching that one.
Grinding isn't rolling, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, also I think, when are you doing a Healy collab drop?
Yeah,
like
right.
the Endless Healy frame. Just saying, if it's a 3-wheeler, I don't know. All right, perhaps it is time.
All right. So one last question for you guys before we go. Round profile wheels or bullet profile wheels for Wizard /Flow /flatland skating?
Oh boy. Billy, I think this is yours first.
I think my choice is I wouldn't want to say something different than what I've voted, but I voted with my feet, and I always skate bullet profile wheels.
Why?
Like I like going fast. I like skating far, and on this type of skate, and it just feels like bullet profile is the way for that. But you did mention for wizard skating, so I will say that for me, the angle of the bullet profile wheel when tilted feels like it has actually more traction than a round wheel, which has the same amount of contact no matter where it is on the edge or on the surface, I guess.
Yep.
So on the bullet profile, you have this low friction moment in the middle, and then when you tip it, you have this whole thing, gripping. And so not only does it kind of make the arc or curve feel more precise, it also is like gripping more.
Yep.
And so the snappiness from edge to edge is more pronounced, which in my opinion, like a 3-turn is an edge switch, and anything else that involves the change of direction of the frame is like a swivel where you're on center edge. And round wheels reward a center edge swivel because there's no difference from the center to the side, right? It's all kind of the same feeling. And the bullet profile wheel really rewards like a strong edge switch. And you feel it when it like, you go from this lock to the other lock, and it locks into each entry and exit carve. So yeah, for versatility, but then also for precision within swiveling, or I guess 3-turning. I'll vote for bullet wheels all day. Although I should try some round ones again, because I probably would be spinning like a top.
Well, I will give everybody a little teaser that I do have some round profile wheels that have been in the works. So
round profile wheels are great too. Yeah. No, I think they have their purpose for dedicated flatland
at some point. Yeah,
I definitely look forward to it. And I think,
Andrew, what about you?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think Billy summed that up nicely, and I agree with all that. And I definitely appreciate like sort of the bullet profile experience. I actually really, really like it on 4x100 in particular. Like with like an S move, I love getting like a really deep outside edge on that initial carve, and the feeling of really, hanging on that edge from the bullet profile. But I will say, like from like a pure like feeling perspective with like wizard moves, flatland, especially depending on the texture that you're skating on, like a good asphalt, for example, I really, really, really like round profile. Something about the slide that you have with it that just gives me this like extra bit of confidence to like really go after it. And I just really like that. But I skate them both all the time, and all surfaces, and I like them both. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I agree with both you guys. I prefer the bullet for the speed and that snappiness of the edge transition. It rewards proper technique or good technique. And but there's something really forgiving in like, it's like a cheat code on like a round profile where it's like the edge is always the same. And so you just don't have to be as precise, I guess, with your technique. So I'm looking forward to the day where I have something to offer people other than a Street Invader. While these are okay, I feel like something much better is coming. So.
I think that's interesting about the precision of the bullet profile. That does mean that there's a more prescriptive motion that you have to achieve, right? Like you've got to tilt it this much to make it do what it needs to do. And so for truly like improvisational, expressive movement that, is of a variety of movement shapes and carves and arcs and all that kind of stuff, I definitely see how round wheels make more sense for that, because you can kind of do half moves and full moves, and all of it can kind of look good, I guess. Whereas with bullet, if you aren't doing it kind of the way that the frame and the wheel want you to, you're kind of stumbling a little bit, right? You kind of a prescribed motion and you have to achieve. So yeah, I think it's interesting to talk about like that kind of stuff, because I don't know if everybody would think about that or just pick the one that's cheapest. But yeah, round wheel definitely lets you, like you're saying, like fudge it a little bit, but really that's a good thing. It doesn't, could be for a beginner. It also could be for an advanced skater who wants to move more slowly, for example, and be more expressive and dancey. I'm talking to you, Dan, and has like a more precise movement set, but it's like at a slower speed. So that might reward a round wheel.
Yeah.
Anyway,
they both have their place for sure. So I think that's a good stopping point for this discussion. I want to thank you guys for taking the time. I know we went really long tonight, almost 2 hours of ARC 5-wheel nerdiness here.
Yes.
So,
Can't get enough.
and I just want to personally thank you both for being involved in the development and design of this frame. Like it was really such a fun, it was challenging project, but it was also really fun and really rewarding. I really feel like we went the distance on the design to like really dial it in. And obviously there's lots of happy skaters out there using them. So
yeah, thanks for including me for sure. It's been an awesome journey, and it's cool to see people's reactions and just the way that they describe this different experience.
Yeah. So, all right, on that note, normally we do endless news. There's not really any news other than there's a new product dropping tomorrow. So tune in, find out what that is. I have a hot or not. Normally we do hot or not. Have you guys familiar with the hot or not?
Yes.
Yeah, of a setup.
Yeah, let's do it real quick. So we're gonna rate this on a scale of 1 to 5.
Yeah! Yeah!
All right.
Oh,
What do you guys think about this one?
hubless. Oh boy.
I found this on Instagram today, and I was like, "This is too good."
Oh man. Okay, and it's not is it electric or not? It's not.
I don't think it is.
Okay, first of all, it looks like it has a flat tire in the front.
That might help with stability.
But look at, oh man, imagine grinding on that skate though. It's got a groove.
It says 4x4. That's a lie.
4 wheels total, right?
Yes.
I think I saw this one. No, it must not be electric. I'm gonna give it 2 yeehaws because there's 2 wheels, and you could put funny stuff in those hubs. Like you could put a juggling pin, or you could store other wheels for your friends. Like if they have a 76, you could just stash it in there. Andrew, how many yeehaws are you giving those?
I mean, what do you guys think about the cuff support for this one?
Oh, next level.
Oof.
You've got
This is an ankle breaker right here.
Oh my
you
god.
got some ventilation back there. I've skated the dirt blades, the 3x150, and they, even at 100 psi, they felt like they were glued to the ground with how sticky they were. It was like skating like a 60A wheel, like in terms of hardness or softness, right? It's like there's no way they were fun. They felt anti-rocker, which this would be. So imagine steering these things.
Is that a hamster?
Hamster, like hamburger style, or yeah, like a mini hamster, like spinning around in there, running.
That's funny.
Andrew, you still haven't rated them, hot or not?
I was mentally preparing for having to rate someone's skate setup, and just like the mental burden of having to do that. I was very nervous about that.
I mean,
But I'm going to pull something from my training as a physicist, which is what was it, that famous retort about something where something is not even wrong. Like that's what this is. It's not even wrong.
I wonder if these were just put on the feet just for the photo and that was it, and then back in the box.
I think there's a missed opportunity here too. They could have done tank treads real easily. They've got the hubs, the spools, whatever. Like, how do they even rotate? Is there like a big bearing?
I don't know. Maybe
Or they
somebody
just
needs to
foam?
buy these. Somebody seriously needs to get these.
Oh my god.
So we should.
B105.
Somebody reach out to this guy in Finland and find out where he got these things. All right, I'm gonna. Andrew, are you abstaining from voting?
I will concur with Billy's assessment of this.
I almost want to give it
it's-
one.
I'm going for. I just think these are dangerous, so I'd give it a
Mm.
1 just for the danger factor. But
It's very responsible of you.
But for
I
original-
think you're right though.
Yeah!
that's all. No, it gets 2 yeehaws.
2 yeehaws. Also,
All right.
it's yeehaw. It's like those are cowboy rollerblades, I guess. The definition.
Yeah. All right. So on that note, thank you, everybody. We'll do it again next month, first Tuesday of every month, 6 p.m. I don't know what date that is, but maybe the next time we'll talk about ArcCS or this new thing that I'm dropping tomorrow. So
Very
have a
exciting.
great evening, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. See y'all.